Welcome everyone. Today's story is especially close to my heart. It's called Adelaide's Idea and it comes from Nicholas Leonard. This was in fact the very first story of his I ever read. It all began about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, when a message from Nicholas arrived in my inbox. He'd heard the narration I'd done and wondered if I might be interested in sharing some of his work. The strange part was that I didn't see that message for 2 whole weeks. No notification, no alert, and even now I think about how easily I could have missed it, and with it so much that followed. Anyway, he sent over a few stories and Adelaide's Idea immediately stood out. I knew I wanted to narrate it, but then I discovered another narrator had already given it voice, a beautiful one, on a channel called Gothic Storytelling. I'll leave a link below so you can listen. And so at the time I turned my attention to Nicholas's other tales that were narrated. Yet this story never really left me, and just the other day while searching for images for another video, I stumbled upon the picture you see now, and instantly I thought that would be perfect for Adelaide's Idea. So the time has come for me to share it with you. Adelaide's Idea by Nicholas Leonard. It was Adelaide's idea, and it worked. I met Adelaide Starlight in 1839, when we were both the age of 19. We've been pallid since. It was on a hill somewhere in Danvers, after we had fallen in love, that Adelaide got the idea. This was at a time when young people were perceptible to tuberculosis, a time when all human romanticism was so alive that the world needed pestilence to balance it out. Her brown eyes were so brown and alive in their muddy color on the hill that day, and her smile was so human, so deviously alive, that her very animation seemed to titter on the absolute immobility of death. Do I miss her natural face? Do I miss when her cheeks weren't concave, and when the sockets that hold her eyes were a creamy porcelain beige? No. She's still Adelaide Starlight, and I'm still Patrick Philip Shell. Her milk chocolate eyes still exuberate the same excited desperation as they did that day we laid on our bellies on the hill. Her smile still reigns, despite the deceptive look of her cheeks. It appears her face is wilting in on itself while trying desperately to attain its original beauty. Oh, but she still smiles the same way she did 185 years ago. She was wearing a modest white dress that day on the hill, and her brown tresses were begging to be freed from the bun she had tied her hair into. Her smile was an oblivious president, oblivious to the plight of her hair. I think it was her smile that made me confess what I did to her. I never was afraid of death until I met you, I told her. She kept her smile, despite this grim remark. I continued perplexedly. Because now that I have you, I don't want the ultimate to come between us. Perhaps that's the only ultimate that I feel can separate us absolutely, Adelaide. Still, she smiled. In a movement as elegant as an owl coming to land, she got off her belly onto her knees and shuffled over to hold my face. She wiped her thumbs beneath my eyes. Had it been Anybody else who took my face in such a way, I would have flinched. So, let's make death believe we've died already, she said, still wiping the soil my eyelashes rake. And he will never come for us. But how? I begged. Adelaide, have it be another who quoted such a thing to me, I'd detach from them at once. Oh, but with this idea, we shall never have to detach. I caught a glimpse of a tanner that they embalmed wrong. Death had already come to mould his face when the wake was being held, Adelaide said. Her eyes were scanning my face so fervently that I thought she was memorizing the blueprint of blood vessels beneath my skin. I know how the dead appear to the living, all pale and sunken in and with burnt eye sockets. You describe the grotesque too beautifully, Adelaide. Our eye sockets shall be but falsely burnt. She rolled her eyes. A baby owl learned to fly. She was just like that in hindsight. Owls belong at night, but here she was in the daylight, in a swan-white dress. What are you proposing, Adelaide? Our charlatan death, she said in a sigh. She said it so beautifully that it sounded like she was rehearsing her final breath. Because she had studied my face so fervently, she understood what I asked in a single blink. You and I will decorate our faces with ornaments of decay, she explained. We'll paint each other's eyelids black and pencil sharp ridges in each other's cheeks to give the appearance of our empty mouths imploding. This'll work? I asked. We have to try anything, she said in another rehearsal of a final breath. I had always known that she had similarities to greats of the past, such as Leonardo da Vinci and Archimedes, and here she was, proving my suspicions right. We met again in a church after Mass hours. She revealed to me the container of black polish while the stained glass windows cast rainbows on our faces. How warmly it smelled that day of candle wax. The plagues Pandora let out, and the plagues that Eve's tentacles unlocked from the peel, shall never reach us after today, Patrick, she whispered while stragglers prayed in the pews behind us. Here is where we fake our death, because the one who comes to ferry freshly fallen souls cannot appear inside a Catholic kirk. Death will be in the graveyard, and we'll see them carry our bodies out, and think we are only bodies. He'll think our souls are elsewhere to reap. What do we do? I hissed in a desperate whisper. Simultaneously collapse, she whispered in another rehearsal for a final breath, although this one was more akin to a wheeze. She let out a whimper before she collapsed in the pew. I let my body become a puppet, and I collapsed beside her. We both closed our eyes and held our breaths, while the stragglers touched their ears to our lips. Both of us were pronounced dead, and cartoned off to the nearest funeral parlour, where we were to be embalmed the following morning. But we were never embalmed. That night, when the funeral parlour employees left, we crawled out of our coffins and celebrated. She painted my face in the greyness of the empty funeral parlour. how smoothly her fingerprints scratched across and below my eyes that night. It felt so ceremonial, like our secret wedding, that not even death was invited to. She giggled while I stenciled triangular shadings into her cheeks. She directed my pencil through her giggling. She closed her eyes and told me I was being too timid applying the eyeshadow. She promised that I wasn't going to hurt her, so I did my best. I was surprised at just how beautiful she looked when she opened her eyes. I should have expected it, of course, but I jolted. Our makeup was so simple, yet believable, that it really did appear she was a dead woman who regained control of her body. She smiled in her revival. After this, she painted my eyes and stenciled my cheeks as well. I had never applied any substance to my lips before, but now Adelaide was thumbing a blue polish into my lips. My mouth had never felt so biotic before, so similar to the fat on a steak. But her fingers were those of the most diligent chef. I applied the same polish to her lips as well, and she lunged forward to smack our lips together. I was relieved that there was still the taste I had come to know inside our kiss. We broke out of the funeral parlor at sunrise. We ran down the cobblestone street, holding hands and exchanging victorious expressions while racing through the astonished faces of our former peers. We maneuvered past carriages that horses pulled at languid speeds while their hooves produced that hollow clapping noise. We hopscotched and skipped over puddles. Throughout our jubilee, we never released one another's hand. I think our teeth, our smiles, had been tied together by an invisible string of floss. Her lips looked purple in the grey sunrise light, and I knew mine looked the same. But nobody's hair could ever have bounced the way hers did that morning. We snuck into an apple orchard and feasted on apples to celebrate. The wind in the trees didn't react to us because our faces had the deceptive look of the dead, but our taste buds were still alive. We still obtained all our senses. In fact, apples had never tasted so cold and so fresh. We took bites from the same apple on opposing sides. She wiped a flake of apple flesh away from my lips at one point, while we both chewed. How our jaws were moving in polite applause. Our appearance frightened a farmhand who yelped and ran away when he saw two spectres eating apples in his father's orchard. We exchanged delighted and amused looks when the farmhand hurried away. Adelaide's parents, the Sterlites, who ran a chair-making business in Gardner, Massachusetts, erected a stone mausoleum in her memory, although her body had been missing. The papers presumed she was the victim of body snatchers, and that her body was now a cadaver in a doctor's basement. Oh, but we knew otherwise. We turned the mausoleum into a bedroom of sorts, configuring her empty stone casket with blankets and pillows. If Death curiously came in, then he would have noticed the two of us asleep inside her stone casket, cuddled up in its velvet-cushioned interior, with our faces pale, cheeks concave, and eyes appearing charred. And Death would have left us there. Decades passed and everybody we knew had died, but we had never aged. So long as we kept our makeup fresh, our eyeshadow black, then we were alive. We spent some months in the Starlight Mansion in 1864. The people who passed by in their winter attire, coats with fluffy cuffs, began to believe the mansion was haunted by the Starlight's daughter and the young man she had died with in that church. We had the occasional group of kids breaking in on a dare to see if there really were ghosts. We delighted in spooking them. Adelaide's giggling was medicine to the old house, and her giggle would echo down the staircase, chasing the schoolboys in their flight. We'd cling to the railing at the top and look down to see the tops of their heads race away, as fluffy as caterpillars. We'd slow dance from the attic down to the drawing room, where we sometimes light a fire in the hearth, mumbled to itself among its glowing coals. Oh, what a choreography it was! Every movement was a ballet as we descended the stairs. The boards creaked and began to creak more, but the bones in our legs were still in their prime and never squeaked. We hadn't aged for 25 years. Our features remained. Her brown eyes reigned despite the black hole I repainted over them every morning. We had not only become invisible to death, but apparently invisible to time. We were still 19. We would have been 44, but we weren't. The mansion was finally purchased, and Adelaide and I returned to the mausoleum. We could have lived anywhere. Death would never find us. Time had abandoned us. And there was a third deity about. The third that only can be adorned by two. I think he has wafted by while we sat on the wharf in Salem and kicked our feet above the Atlantic. My parents never let me come to Salem, Adelaide said while we watched the whaling ships go out. They were always afraid of me getting shanghaied. We laughed together about that. We explored the tunnels underneath Salem before the town started closing them off. And yes, we liked to frequent apple orchards and vineyards, stealing apples and wine while the United States had its 100th birthday. We would have been 56, but we were still 19. We still have, so much energy that the only logical thing to do with it seemed to be running around cemeteries together. It was the place where we teased death the most. Any mourners or groundskeepers that saw us mistook us for actual ghosts. But we didn't frighten people anymore. For a young man and a young lady ghost have a certain unspeakable sweetness to them. A couple forever in eternity. That macabre happy ending, so to speak. We were there when New York City was alive with blimps and airships. They floated above us like whales of the sky, while precursory skyscrapers reached for them. Adelaide and I would walk the city while she clung to my arm, using me as guidance because she never really could take her eyes away from the transit of blimps above. we could see ant-sized construction workers having their lunch on iron beams, hundreds of feet in the air. One day, a sandwich fell from the beam they sat on, and it gave Adelaide and me a great laugh because it almost landed in our hair. New York City was all brown, white, and beige those days. Humanity was in the sky, convincing the clouds to turn bronze with all our pollution. How odd it was for us to be in a city, on the verge of becoming gold, with all its Art Deco architecture, while our faces remained beautifully cadaverous. I'd spin her in hotel lobbies in front of the lines of gold that jetted across black columns and curved to the rafters with flower stem physique. That was where we slow danced for a time, for a decade. And Adelaide befriended all the stray cats when the Depression came. America turned to dust, not bronze. But we were still 19 and eternally together, eternally in love. It didn't matter how close the world was coming to an end, for we survived all endings. People gave us leering glances when we relaxed on a farm one day in 1934. How sick we appeared to them. But we never cared about how the local folk looked at us, because we always focused only on each other. I remember Adelaide laying on a hay bale the same way she had laid on that hill in Danvers in 1839, which was 95 years ago, and she was still the same. Her lips were blue as if she were a body preserved under the sea in some bourgeois shipwreck. But her smile hadn't changed a bit in 95 years. It glimmered, it twinkled. And through all these years, I never stopped to say, "It worked, Adelaide, your idea worked," because I felt I didn't need to. For almost a century, we reveled in the success of Adelaide's idea. Throughout all our adventures on the East Coast, never once did an ominous being in a black cloak appear. No scythe's shadow ever sliced across our faces, because our faces were those of the already dead. But our smiles were alive. In 1965, we shared a chocolate milkshake at Mrs. Walkie's diner, while the jukebox buzzed with doo-wop. The tablecloth in the booth was checkered red and white, but our eye sockets were still black while we drank from the same milkshake. We had been 19 for 126 years. It is 2024 now, and we have been 19 for 185 years. We've been frequenting Salem for the past week because the bustle of tourists gives us even greater cover from death. We like it here because some of the houses remind us of how houses used to look, especially the house of the Seven Gables. Yesterday, we skipped merrily down the road the witch house is situated on. Cars were honking at us from behind, but we kept skipping forward and laughed, for we have to skip in the middle of the road. Why else do the little leaves fall on adjacent edges? The little leaves have fallen too greatly similar to rose petals along an aisle in a church. Adelaide's laughter and smile have never changed in 185 years. But I think it took me 185 years to realize just why Adelaide's idea truly worked. It was never our makeup that allowed us a longer stay on Earth. I think it was our love. I know it was our love. I know it because of how my 204-year-old heart beats when I hear her giggle as we skip down Salem. It was never the black eyeliner we applied to each other every morning. It was never the blue polish we smudged into our lips when we kiss. It was never the careful stenciling we do into our cheeks. But I'll never tell Adelaide this. No. I know exactly why we have survived all this time. Why and how we have absolutely defied biology and physics. It is because we are in love. And we will apply the same cadaverous makeup for eternity. Because that is how long true love should last. The hill in Danvers can deflate. The church we faked our deaths in can rot and be renovated and sold. But Adelaide and I will always be Adelaide and I, because that is just how love is meant to be.